The entire lobby froze when Kim Tae-sung raised his voice. "Where are you going wearing that thing?" Seoul's most feared Korean mafia boss had never shouted in public before. His men watched closely, waiting for the woman to shrink. She didn't. Amara stood calmly, her indigo head wrap catching the light. The symbols stitched into it were old, deliberate, worn only by women who never needed permission to enter dangerous places. She looked at him, not scared, not impressed. Then she smiled. "It's interesting," she said softly, "that you think I dressed for you." A quiet tension crept into the room. Kim Tae-sung felt it, an unfamiliar pressure behind his eyes. For no reason he could explain, the thought crossed his mind. This woman already knows how my night ends. He straightened, masking it with anger, but the warning had already landed, and she hadn't even raised her voice. Before the story continues, let me say this. If these stories comfort you, entertain you, or make you feel understood, please subscribe. It's free, but it means everything to this channel. Now, let's continue. The Lotus Hotel was Kim Tae-sung's territory. Every politician, businessman, and underground player in Seoul knew the 17th floor belonged to him, the penthouse suite, the private elevator, the guards who never smiled. Amara had walked past all of it, not as a guest, not as an employee. She'd walked through the lobby like she owned the air itself, heading toward the restaurant where her monthly meeting was about to begin. That's when he shouted. His men had never heard him raise his voice. Kim Tae-sung was known for whispers that felt like knives, for silence that made men confess. His reputation was built on control so absolute that anger would have been beneath him, until her. She stood there now, 5'6" of calm audacity, her indigo head wrap catching the chandelier light. The fabric was wrapped in a style he didn't recognize, high, regal, with golden thread forming symbols that seemed to shimmer when she moved. Her dress was simple, black, professional, but the head wrap made her impossible to ignore. "You can't go in there," he said, his voice returning to his usual controlled tone. "That section is closed." "No, it isn't," Amara replied. Her accent was American, but something older ran underneath it. "Mr. Kim, I'm here to eat, not to interfere with your business. The restaurant has 43 tables. You've reserved 12. Surely you can spare one for a woman who's come a very long way." "How do you know how many tables you reserved?" She smiled again, and this time it reached her eyes. "Or how far I've come?" He didn't answer. She nodded, as if he'd confirmed something. "May I pass?" Every instinct told him to say no, to have her escorted out, to ban her from every property he controlled in this city. But those symbols on her head wrap caught the light again, and for a split second, Kim Tae-sung saw something impossible. A flash of himself, alone in this same lobby, clutching his chest as men in suits walked past him. He blinked. The vision vanished. "You have 30 minutes. Then I want you gone." "I'll need 45. The tasting menu has 7 courses. His men tensed. No one corrected Kim Tae-sung, but she wasn't correcting him. She was simply informing him, as if she already knew he'd agree. And he did. He stepped aside. As Amara walked past, she paused, just for a moment, close enough that he could smell something faint and unfamiliar. Sage and something sweeter, older. "Your mother wore indigo," she said quietly, "on the day she told you to be careful with power." Kim Tae-sung went very still. "You've never told anyone that," he said. "No," Amara agreed. "You haven't." Then she walked into the restaurant, and Kim Tae-sung stood in the lobby, his heart pounding for reasons he couldn't name. His right-hand man, Min-jun, appeared at his elbow. "Should I have her removed?" "No." "But sir," "I said no." Kim Tae-sung's voice was sharp. "Watch her. Don't approach. Just watch." Min-jun bowed and disappeared. Kim Tae-sung stood there for another moment, staring at the restaurant's entrance. Your mother wore indigo. No one knew that. He'd been 7 years old, sitting in their small apartment while his mother wrapped her hair before going to clean houses in Gangnam. She'd worn an indigo scarf, not a head wrap like Amara's, but the color was exact. "Be careful with power, Tae-sung-a," she'd said, "because it makes you blind to what's standing right in front of you." He'd never forgotten, and he'd never told anyone. Amara sat at table 17, by the window overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. She ordered the tasting menu, in perfect Korean, her pronunciation flawless enough to make the server pause. From his private booth across the restaurant, Kim Tae-sung watched her through the glass partition. She ate slowly, deliberately. Between courses, she'd look out the window, her fingers tracing absent patterns on the tablecloth, the same symbols from her head wrap. His phone buzzed. Min Jun's text read, "She checked in yesterday. American passport. Dr. Amara Okoye, professor of cultural anthropology, Columbia University. No criminal record, no debts, no connections to any organization we know." Kim Tae-sung typed back, "Why is she here? She's giving a keynote at Seoul University tomorrow on prophecy and power in modern systems." He stared at the text, then at her. She was looking directly at him now, through the glass, through the distance. She shouldn't have been able to see him clearly from there. His booth was darkened, designed for privacy, but she saw him. She raised her wine glass. Not a toast, just an acknowledgement. Then she smiled and returned to her meal. Kim Tae-sung set down his phone. "Sir?" One of his associates, a man named Park, cleared his throat. "The contract you wanted to review. Later." "But the deadline." "I said later." Park fell silent. Kim Tae-sung couldn't look away from her. 45 minutes later, exactly as she'd predicted, Amara finished her meal. She paid. He watched the server's surprised face when she left a 30% tip, and stood. She walked toward the exit, toward him. Kim Tae-sung's men shifted, ready to intercept. He raised one hand. They froze. Amara stopped at the glass partition of his booth. This close, he could see her face clearly. Mid-30s, maybe. Skin like polished mahogany. Eyes that held something ancient despite her youth. "Thank you for the table," she said. "You didn't need my permission." "No," she agreed, "but courtesy costs nothing." "What do you want?" It was the question he always asked. Everyone wanted something. Amara's smile was gentle, almost sad. "To give you a warning," she said. "About what?" "About the choice you'll make 3 days from now." She tilted her head. "The symbols on my gele, do you know what they mean?" "No. They're nsibidi. My grandmother taught them to me. She learned from her grandmother, all the way back." Amara touched the golden thread on her head wrap. "This one means vision. This one means consequence. And this one," she indicated a spiral pattern, "means the thing that returns." Kim Tae-sung felt that pressure behind his eyes again. "You're going to tell me my fortune?" His voice was cold, mocking. "No, you don't believe in fortune." Amara's expression didn't change. "But you believe in patterns. You've built your entire empire on understanding them. Who moves when? Who breaks first? Who stays loyal?" He was right. He hated that he was right. 3 days, she continued. "You'll be offered a partnership. It will look like expansion, like safety. The man who offers it will use all the right words. How do you know? But there's a symbol you won't see." She dropped her voice, taking on a quality that made the air feel heavier. "The spiral, the thing that returns. What you take from him, you'll owe 3-fold. And the debt will come when you're most certain of your power." Kim Tae-sung stood up abruptly, his men tensed. Amara didn't move. "You walked into my territory," he said quietly, dangerously. "You interrupted my evening, and now you're threatening me with riddles." "Not threatening, warning." She met his eyes. "There's a difference. Get out." "I'm going." But she didn't move yet. "Mr. Kim, my grandmother used to say that powerful men make the same mistake. They think the world revolves around their choices. But sometimes," she touched her head wrap again, The world is simply revolving, and if you stand in the wrong place at the wrong time, it crushes you. I'm not afraid of being crushed. I know. And there was genuine sympathy in her voice. That's why it's going to hurt so much. She turned and walked away. Kim Tae-sung watched her go, his heart pounding with something between rage and fear. 3 days. He didn't believe in prophecy, didn't believe in mystical symbols or warnings from strange women in indigo head wraps, but his mother's voice echoed anyway. Be careful with power. It makes you blind to what's standing right in front of you. If you're enjoying this story, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Love and Tension for more stories like this. Kim Tae-sung didn't sleep that night. He told himself it was business keeping him awake. The shipment arriving Thursday, the police captain who needed convincing, the usual pressures of running an empire built on fear and leverage. But when he closed his eyes, he saw indigo fabric and golden symbols. 3 days. By morning, he'd convinced himself it was performance art, some elaborate con. Americans loved that sort of thing. Dramatic warnings, mystical nonsense designed to unsettle wealthy targets before the real play. He had Min Jun pull everything on Dr. Amara Okoye. The report arrived by noon. She was exactly who she claimed to be. Professor of Cultural Anthropology at Columbia University, published author of 3 academic books, including one on West African prophetic systems that had won awards he'd never heard of. She'd been invited to Seoul University to deliver the keynote at an international conference on cultural preservation. No criminal connections, no debts, no history of cons or frauds. Her hotel was modest. Not the Lotus, but a respectable chain near the university. She'd paid for everything herself. No sponsors, no mysterious funding. She was simply a professor who came to give a talk, and somehow knew about his mother's indigo scarf. Kim Tae-sung sat in his office, staring at the report. Sir? Min Jun stood in the doorway. The contractor is here, Mr. Nakamura. Ah, yes, the contract meeting. But that wasn't for 3 days. This was just a preliminary discussion. Nakamura ran operations in Osaka. Nothing major, but his territory included several ports Kim Tae-sung needed for expansion. Send him in. Nakamura was in his 50s, gray-haired and formal. He bowed low. They conducted business in Japanese. Kim Tae-sung's was fluent, discussing shipping routes, police jurisdictions, profit splits. It was routine. Until Nakamura said, I have a proposal, but I'd like to present it properly. May I return in 3 days? I'll have all the documentation prepared. Kim Tae-sung went very still. 3 days? Yes. Thursday evening, if that suits you. Nakamura smiled. I believe you'll find it worth your time. It's a significant expansion opportunity. Very safe, very profitable. It will look like expansion, like safety. Amara's voice echoed in his mind. Kim Tae-sung forced himself to smile. Thursday is fine. After Nakamura left, Min Jun returned. Thoughts, sir? Run a deep background. Everything. I want to know who Nakamura's borrowed from, who he owes, every partnership he's ever made. Sir, we already... Everything. Min Jun bowed and left. Kim Tae-sung stood and walked to his window. Seoul stretched below him, a kingdom he'd built through violence and strategy. He'd clawed his way from poverty to power, survived 3 assassination attempts, outlasted rivals who'd been born into their positions. He didn't believe in prophecy, but he believed in preparation. The next evening, Kim Tae-sung did something he never did. He went to the university. The conference was public. The keynote was open to anyone willing to sit through an academic lecture. He wore casual clothes, jeans, a leather jacket, and sat in the back row of the auditorium. Dr. Amara Okoye stood on stage in professional attire. No indigo head wrap today, but her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo. She looked every bit the professor, complete with a slide presentation and academic citations. But when she spoke, the room went quiet. We often think of prophecy as magic, as supernatural prediction. But in many African cultures, prophecy is simply pattern recognition. It's the ability to see where the threads are pulling, where tension leads. She clicked to the next slide, an image of woven fabric, complex and geometric. My grandmother was an expert weaver. She could look at a piece of cloth and tell you where it would tear, not because she was psychic, but because she understood tension. She knew which threads carried too much weight, which patterns created weakness. Kim Tae-sung leaned forward. Power systems are the same, Amara continued. They follow patterns. Empires fall the same way across centuries, not because of prophecy, but because they repeat the same structural mistakes. They overextend. They trust the wrong allies. They mistake control for stability. She clicked again. The screen showed a spiral pattern, identical to one on her head wrap. This is the symbol for the thing that returns. In NCBD writing, it represents cycles. Karma, if you want to use that word. But really, it's simpler than that. Her eyes scanned the audience. It means what you do comes back, not as punishment, just as pattern, as inevitable consequence. She wasn't looking at him specifically, but Kim Tae-sung felt like every word was aimed at his chest. The lecture continued for another 40 minutes, academic, scholarly, citing sources and studies, but underneath it all was that same current he'd felt in the hotel lobby. She's not predicting the future, she's reading the pattern. After the lecture, students crowded the stage with questions. Kim Tae-sung waited until the crowd thinned, then approached. Amara saw him and smiled. "Mr. Kim, I didn't think you'd come." "You knew I would." "I thought you might." She gathered her notes. "Did you learn anything?" "That you're very good at your job." "Thank you. That doesn't mean you can read my future." Amara tilted her head. "No, it means I can read your present. The future just follows naturally." She paused. "Has Mr. Nakamura scheduled his meeting yet?" Kim Tae-sung's jaw tightened. "How do you know about Nakamura?" "I don't, not specifically." She gestured to the auditorium around them. "But men like you always have someone like him circling, someone offering expansion, safety, partnership." Her voice softened. "It's the pattern, Mr. Kim, not prophecy." "And if I refuse his offer?" "Then you break the pattern." She said it, like it was the simplest thing in the world. The spiral only returns if you feed it. If you don't take the bait, there's nothing to come back. What's he offering that's so dangerous? "I don't know the details. I'm not psychic," Amara smiled. "But I know the shape of it. He'll offer you something you've wanted for a long time, access you've been denied, respect you feel you're owed, and the price will seem reasonable. But he's borrowing what he's offering from someone bigger, someone you don't know about yet, and when they call in that debt, it won't be Nakamura who pays. It'll be whoever he partnered with." Kim Tae-sung's hands clenched. "You could be lying. This could all be manipulation." "It could be," Amara agreed easily, "but you'll know on Thursday. When he makes his offer, pay attention to one thing, where his funding comes from. If he can't give you a clear answer, walk away." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw you standing in that lobby shouting at me about my head wrap, and for just a moment, you looked exactly like my uncle did, 6 months before he lost everything. I'm not your uncle." "No, but you're making the same mistake." She picked up her bag. He thought respect meant never showing weakness, never trusting warnings, never admitting he might not see everything. And what happened to him? "He died," she said simply. "Alone. Confused, betrayed by men he thought he controlled." She slung her bag over her shoulder. "I don't want that for you, Mr. Kim. I don't even know you, but I understand the pattern, and I'm tired of watching it repeat." She started to walk away. "Wait," Kim Tae-sung said. She paused. "Why the head wrap? Why dress like that if you knew it would provoke a reaction?" Amara looked back at him, and for the first time he saw something vulnerable in her expression. "Because women in my family have worn these symbols for 7 generations. We wear them as protection, as warning, as a way of saying, we see the patterns you don't." She touched her hair. I wore it that night because I knew a powerful man needed to be unsettled, needed to be reminded that there are older powers than fear. That's arrogant. Yes, she smiled, but so is thinking you own a hotel lobby. Then she left, and Kim Tae-sung stood in the empty auditorium, his mind racing. Wednesday passed in a blur of routine business, but Kim Kim-sung couldn't focus. Min-jun's deep background on Nakamura had revealed something interesting. 3 months ago, Nakamura took a sudden trip to Macau, private jet, no business explanation. He returned with significantly more liquid capital. Who did he meet with? Kim Tae-sung asked. We don't know yet, but I'm working on it. Thursday arrived. At 6 p.m., Nakamura walked into Kim Tae-sung's office wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather folder. Mr. Kim, he said warmly, thank you for seeing me. They sat. Nakamura opened his folder and slid papers across the desk. I'm offering you access to 3 major port operations in Japan, Osaka, Yokohama, and Kobe. Full partnership. You handle distribution on our end. You handle procurement on yours. Profit split? 60-40 in your favor. Kim Tae-sung scanned the documents. The numbers were extraordinary. This was expansion he'd wanted for 5 years. Access that had been blocked by Japanese organizations who saw him as an outsider. Why now? Kim Tae-sung asked. The landscape has changed, Nakamura said smoothly. The old guards are retiring. New opportunities are opening up. I need a reliable Korean partner. You need Japanese access. It's logical. Who's funding this? The question came out sharper than he intended. Nakamura's blinked. I'm sorry. These operations require significant capital, infrastructure, bribes. Where's your funding coming from? My own operations, naturally. 3 months ago, you couldn't afford this scale. Now you can. Someone's backing you. Who? A pause. Mr. Kim, I don't think... Then we're done. Kim Tae-sung stood. Thank you for your time. Wait. Nakamura stood as well, his composure cracking. You're walking away from this opportunity because of paranoia? I'm walking away because you can't answer a simple question. It's not a simple question, it's... Nakamura stopped himself, collected himself. There's a consortium, Chinese investors, very private, very legitimate. They're funding expansion throughout Asia. Names. I can't give you names. They value discretion. Kim Tae-sung smiled, and it wasn't kind. Then they can keep their discretion and their ports. He walked Nakamura to the door himself, the ultimate dismissal. After Nakamura left, Min-jun appeared. Sir, find out everything about this Chinese consortium. Everything. Kim Tae-sung's voice was hard. And send flowers to Dr. Okoye at her hotel. Sir, orchids, purple, with a note that says, pattern recognized. Min-jun bowed, confused but obedient. Kim Tae-sung returned to his office and stood at the window. The spiral only returns if you feed it. He'd almost fed it. The thought sent cold understanding through him. If he'd accepted that partnership, he'd have been tangled with investors he couldn't identify, owing debts he couldn't calculate. What you take from him, you'll owe threefold. Downstairs, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You broke the pattern. That's harder than you think. A. He stared at the text. Then typed, Who are you really? The response came immediately. Someone who understands that power without vision is just walking blind. Your mother tried to teach you that. She died when I was 12. I know. And you've been trying to prove you could see ever since. But you can't see everything alone, Mr. Kim. No one can. He sat down heavily. Why help me? The response took longer this time. Because 7 generations of women in my family learned to read patterns, and we're tired of watching men destroy themselves over preventable mistakes. Consider it professional courtesy. Professional courtesy. I study power systems. You run one. We both recognize patterns. The difference is, I don't have an ego invested in being right. Despite everything, Kim Tae-sung smiled. The flowers were presumptuous. So was yelling at me in your lobby. Touché. He set down his phone and looked out at Seoul. Something had shifted. He'd broken a pattern, and somehow that felt more dangerous than following it would have been. 2 weeks passed. Kim Tae-sung heard through his network that Nakamura's consortium had been exposed as a front for a Chinese triad expansion. 3 Japanese Yakuza captains who'd accepted similar partnerships were now facing territorial wars they couldn't win. If he had accepted, he'd be fighting that war right now. Instead, he was having tea with a professor of cultural anthropology in a quiet cafe near Seoul University. Amara sat across from him, wearing jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was loose today, natural curls framing her face. She looked younger, more relaxed. "You saved my organization," Kim Tae-sung said bluntly. "I gave you information. You made the choice. That's a distinction without difference." "No, it's the most important distinction there is." She sipped her tea. "Prophecy fails when people think they're helpless, when they believe the future is fixed. But patterns can be broken. That's the whole point. Your family business is pattern breaking? My family business is pattern recognition. Breaking them is up to the person living in them." Kim Tae-sung studied her. In sunlight, he could see the details he'd missed in the hotel lobby, the faint scar above her left eyebrow, the silver threads in her hair, premature for her age, the way her hands moved when she talked, graceful, deliberate, like they were weaving invisible fabric. "How does it work?" he asked. "The symbols, the patterns. Honestly?" Amara set down her cup. "Part of it is just careful observation. I watched you that night in the lobby, the way your men positioned themselves, the way you controlled the space, the way you reacted to my head wrap, anger masking fear. I wasn't afraid," she corrected gently. "You were terrified, not of me, of the unknown. You're a man who survives by controlling information, by seeing threats before they materialize. And I walked in wearing something you didn't understand, behaving in ways you couldn't predict. So you manipulated me. I unsettled you. There's a difference." Her expression turned serious. "Mr. Kim, men in your position are surrounded by people who tell you what they want to hear, who reinforce their certainty. I didn't do that. I showed you uncertainty, and that saved your life." She wasn't wrong. "And the rest of it?" he pressed. "Knowing about my mother, the timing of Nakamura's offer?" Amara hesitated. For the first time, she looked uncomfortable. "That part's harder to explain," she said finally. "My grandmother called it iseme, sight. She taught me to watch for certain signs, tension in a room, micro-expressions, the way people hold their bodies when they're lying or afraid." She met his eyes. "Your mother. I didn't know specifics, but I knew the shape of it. You're Korean, powerful, probably self-made given how you carry yourself. That means family pressure. That means parental expectations. I guessed indigo because it's traditional, because women who raise sons like you often hold on to tradition even in poverty. That's still just observation." "Mostly, yes," she paused. "But sometimes the symbols show me things, flashes, moments that haven't happened yet. That's impossible." "I know," she smiled ruefully. "I'm a professor of anthropology. I've spent my career studying cultural belief systems from an academic perspective. I don't believe in magic, but I can't explain what happens when I wear the jele my grandmother made, when I trace the symbols she taught me." Kim Tae-sung leaned back. "Show me." "What?" "The symbols. Show me how it works." Amara considered him for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a square of indigo fabric, the same one from the hotel lobby. She spread it on the table between them. In daylight, the symbols were clearer. Golden thread formed intricate patterns, spirals, crosses, angular shapes that seemed to shift as she looked at them. "This is Ninsibidi, an ancient writing system from southeastern Nigeria. Each symbol has layers of meaning. This spiral means cycle. This cross means crossroads. This one," she touched a symbol that looked like a ladder, "means ascent and descent." "Your grandmother made this?" "She embroidered it. But the symbols are hundreds of years old, maybe thousands." Amara's voice softened. "She taught me to meditate on them, to trace them with my fingers while clearing my mind. She said they were keys. Keys to what? To seeing the pattern underneath the chaos. She demonstrated, her finger tracing the spiral slowly, repeatedly. Her eyes lost focus. Kim Tae-sung watched, fascinated despite himself. After a minute, Amara blinked and looked up. "You're going to receive a phone call," she said quietly, "within the next 3 days, from someone you haven't spoken to in years, someone from your childhood." His breath caught. "Who? I don't know. I just see a connection. Someone who knew you when you were small, when you were," she hesitated, "innocent." Kim Tae-sung's chest tightened. There was only one person from his childhood who fit that description, Lee Jin-ho, his best friend from elementary school, before poverty had scattered them to different worlds. But Jin-ho had disappeared years ago, moved to Busan last he heard. They hadn't spoken in over a decade. That's a guess.
Maybe. Amara folded the fabric carefully. But you'll know in 3 days. She changed the subject then, asking about Seoul, about his favorite restaurants, about things that had nothing to do with prophecy or power. And Kim Tae-sung found himself talking, really talking, not strategy or business, but about the city he'd built his empire in, about the view from his office, about how Seoul looked different at dawn. Amara listened like his words mattered, like he was more than his reputation. When they parted, she touched his arm briefly. "Thank you for the tea," she said. "Thank you for the warning 2 weeks ago." "You're welcome," she smiled. "Try not to yell at any more women about their head wraps." "I'll make no promises." Her laugh followed him to his car. 3 days later, his phone rang. Unknown number. Korean area code. He answered. "Kim Tae-sung? Tae-sunga?" The voice was tentative, half familiar. It's Jin-ho. Lee Jin-ho. I don't know if you remember." Kim Tae-sung sat down hard. "I remember. I'm in Seoul. Just for a few days. I heard you were successful. I wanted to say congratulations. And maybe you see you? If you have time?" They met for dinner that night. Jin-ho looked older, worn. He'd become a social worker in Busan, helping at-risk youth. He had stories about kids who reminded him of them. Poor, smart, desperate to escape. They talked for 3 hours, and when they parted, Jin-ho hugged him. "I'm proud of you," Jin-ho said. "Not because you're powerful, because you survived. That's harder." After he left, Kim Tae-sung sat in his car for a long time. Then he texted Amara. "How?" Her response, "The pattern showed a circle closing. Someone from your beginning reaching your present. That's all I saw. The rest was just waiting." "That's not an answer." "No, but it's the truth." He stared at his phone, then typed, "Dinner, tomorrow. Let me take you somewhere that isn't a cafe." "Why?" "Because I want to understand how you see what you see." A pause. "Okay, but no shouting about my outfit." Despite everything, he smiled. "No promises." The restaurant Kim Tae-sung chose was private, traditional Korean, with individual rooms and impeccable service. Amara arrived wearing a dress in deep purple, the color close enough to indigo to be intentional. Her hair was wrapped again, but simpler this time, elegant without being ceremonial. She looked beautiful. The thought surprised him. "Mr. Kim," she greeted. "Tae-sung," he corrected. "If we're having dinner, use my name." "Tae-sung," she smiled. "Then you should call me Amara." They ordered. The food was excellent, but Kim Tae-sung barely tasted it. He was too focused on her. "Tell me about your family, the women who taught you the patterns." Amara set down her chopsticks. "My grandmother was born in a village in Nigeria. Rural, traditional. She was trained as what we'd call a diviner, someone who read signs, interpreted dreams, helped people understand their choices. And you inherited that?" "She thought I might. My mother didn't have the gift, but I did." Amara's expression turned distant. "I started seeing patterns when I was 8. Nothing dramatic, just knowing when storms were coming, or when someone was lying, or when a situation would turn dangerous. That must have been frightening. Terrifying," she agreed. "I didn't want it. I wanted to be normal. So I went to university, studied anthropology, tried to make sense of it academically." "And did you?" "Partially." She met his eyes. "I learned that every culture has people like me. Seers, shamans, prophets, we're wired differently, more sensitive to patterns, to probability, to the subtle tensions that predict outcomes. That's not magic. No, it's neurology, psychology, pattern recognition on a subconscious level. She paused. But the symbols help. They focus the mind, create a meditative state where those patterns become clearer. So you're not actually seeing the future. I'm seeing the probable future, based on current patterns. If nothing changes, this is where things lead. She leaned forward. But Taesung, that's the important part. Things can always change. You can always break the pattern. He poured her more tea. Why are you really in Seoul? The conference? No, the real reason. Amara sighed. Because 3 months ago, I had a vision, a very clear one. I saw a man in Seoul, powerful, Korean, someone important making a choice that would cascade into violence, not just for him, but for thousands. I saw weapons, shipping routes, drugs flowing into communities like water, children dying, families destroyed. Her hands trembled slightly. And I saw it all starting with one partnership, one handshake, Nakamura. I didn't know his name, I just knew the pattern. So I came. I arranged the conference as cover, and I waited to see who the powerful man would be. And when I shouted at you, I knew it was you. She smiled sadly. You were exactly what I'd seen. Powerful, dangerous, standing at a crossroads without knowing it. Kim Taesung sat back. You came to Seoul to save me. I came to break a pattern that would have killed hundreds of people. She met his eyes. Saving you was just the method. The honesty of it hit him in the chest. And now? He asked. The pattern's broken. You can go home. Yes, but you're still here. Amara looked down at her plate. My flight is in 3 days. Stay longer. Why? He didn't have a good answer. Or rather, he had several answers and none of them made strategic sense. Because he saw him. Really saw him, not his power or his reputation, because he didn't fear him, because when she looked at him, he felt like the boy his mother had raised, not the man he'd become. Because I want to understand you better, he said finally. You mean you want to control what I see? No, the word came out firmer than he intended. I mean I want to know you. Not Dr. Okoye, not the pattern reader, you. Amara studied him for a long moment. That might be dangerous, she said softly. For who? Both of us. But she didn't say no. She stayed. Amara extended her trip by 2 weeks. She told her department she was conducting additional field research. The truth was more complicated. Kim Taesung showed Seoul through his eyes, not the tourist version, but the real city, the neighborhoods where he'd grown up, the restaurant where his mother had worked, the bridge where he'd decided to survive no matter the cost. I was 16, he said, standing at the railing. Sitting right here. I'd just been beaten for the 3rd time that month by gang members who said they owed them protection money. Amara stood beside him, listening. I had 2 choices, he continued. Keep being a victim or become dangerous. He looked at her. I chose dangerous. And you've been dangerous ever since. Yes. Are you proud of that? The question surprised him. Most people would never ask. I'm alive. That's better than the alternative. That's not an answer. Kim Taesung turned to face her fully. No, I'm not proud. I'm necessary. There's a difference. Necessary for what? For survival. For the people who depend on me. For maintaining order in chaos. Amara touched his hand on the railing. Taesung, do you know what the saddest pattern I see is? He shook his head. Men who become monsters to survive, then forget how to stop being monsters when the threat is gone. Her voice was gentle. You're still fighting like you're 16 and desperate, but you're not anymore. You're 43. You've won. You can stop now. If I stop, I become vulnerable. You're already vulnerable. You're just pretending you're not. The truth of it stung. They stood there in silence, the river flowing below them, Seoul's lights reflecting on the water. Teach me, he said finally. Teach you what? To see patterns the way you do, to stop reacting and start understanding. Amara smiled. That takes time. I have time, if you're willing to stay. She squeezed his hand. 2 more weeks, then I have to return to New York. Then teach me what you can in 2 weeks. The lessons began the next day. Amara brought her grandmother's fabrics, not just the indigo jele, but others, crimson with black symbols, white with silver thread, each one meant for different purposes. This isn't magic, she reminded him as they sat in his penthouse. This is meditation, focus, learning to quiet the noise and see what's actually there. She taught him to trace the symbols, to breathe in rhythm with the patterns, to let his mind unfocus until the threads of probability became visible. Don't force it, she said. Let it come to you. Kim Tae-sung was terrible at it initially. His mind was too active, too strategic, too busy planning 3 moves ahead. But Amara was patient, and slowly something shifted. One evening, tracing a spiral pattern for the 100th time, Kim Tae-sung saw it. Not a vision, not clearly, but a sense, a feeling. Min Jun was lying about something. The thought came from nowhere, but it felt certain. There, Amara said softly, watching his face. You felt it. How did you? Your breathing changed. Your eyes focused on something not in this room. She smiled. That's how it starts. A feeling, an intuition that's stronger than it should be. The next day, Kim Tae-sung confronted Min Jun about finances. His right-hand man broke down immediately. He'd been skimming small amounts for years, thinking it would never be noticed. Kim Tae-sung should have been furious. Instead, he felt oddly calm. Why? He asked. My daughter, Min Jun said, tears in his eyes. Her medical bills. I was desperate. You should have told me. You don't show weakness to Kim Tae-sung. The words hit hard, because they were true. Kim Tae-sung paid the medical bills, docked Min Jun's pay to recover the stolen amount, but he didn't fire him. You're loyal. Loyalty is rare. Don't betray it again. Min Jun bowed deeply, shocked. That night, Amara smiled at him. You're learning. Learning what? That seeing the pattern is only half. Choosing how to respond to it is the other half. She touched his face gently. The old you would have killed him. I should have. But you didn't, because you saw the whole pattern. The fear, the desperation, the humanity. Her thumb brushed his cheekbone. That's growth, Tae-sung. He caught her hand, holding it against his face. I don't want you to leave, he said quietly. I know. Stay. For how long? As long as you want. Amara's expression turned pained. Tae-sung, I have a life in New York, a career, responsibilities. Bring them here. It's not that simple. Why not? She pulled her hand back gently. Because you're asking me to reorganize my entire life around you, and I've seen that pattern before too. Women who become satellites of powerful men, who lose themselves in someone else's orbit. I wouldn't do that to you. You wouldn't mean to, she corrected, but patterns are strong. They pull even when we resist. Kim Tae-sung stood, frustration rising. So what then? We just stop? You go back to New York and I go back to being blind? You're not blind anymore. You've learned to see. With you. Because I was the teacher. But Kim Tae-sung, she stood as well, facing him. You don't need me to see patterns. You need me because you're lonely. And I need you because you make me feel less strange. But need isn't the same as sustainable. What would make it sustainable? I don't know, she admitted. I've never been in this situation before. They stood there, the tension between them electric and painful. Then Amara did something unexpected. She took out the indigo jele and wrapped it around her hair right there in his living room. Then she sat on his couch and patted the cushion beside her. Come here, she said. He sat. She took his hands and placed them on the fabric over her knees. Trace the spiral. With me this time. Their fingers moved together, following the golden thread. Amara closed her eyes. Show me the pattern, she whispered. Kim Tae-sung felt it, that shift in consciousness, that falling into something deeper, and then he saw it. Not a vision, exactly, more like a feeling given shape. He saw himself, months from now, standing in his office, alone, successful, powerful, empty. He saw Amara in New York, teaching her classes, publishing her papers, respected, accomplished, lonely. Two people who'd found something rare, letting it slip away because neither knew how to bridge the gap between their worlds. The image shifted. He saw another possibility. Amara staying, but gradually dimming, her work suffering, her identity subsumed, the light in her eyes fading as she became an accessory to his life rather than the center of her own. That possibility hurt worse. Then a third image, himself in New York, out of place, restless, his empire crumbling in his absence. Both of them miserable. "I see it," he whispered. "I do too," Amara said, her voice thick. They opened their eyes together. "There's no good pattern," he said. "Not one that we can see right now." She squeezed his hands. "But Tae-sung, patterns can be created, not just broken. We could make something new. How? I don't know yet, but I know this. I'm not ready to walk away, and neither are you. So we try? We try." He kissed her then, gently, like she was precious. When they broke apart, Amara was smiling through tears. "I've never been this uncertain about a future before. Is that bad?" "No," she laughed softly. "It's human." 3 months later, they had found a rhythm. Amara kept her position at Columbia but took a semester sabbatical. She lived in Seoul, in her own apartment, maintaining her independence, but most nights she ended up at Kim Tae-sung's penthouse. She continued her research, now focused on Korean prophetic systems. She gave lectures at Seoul University as a visiting scholar. And she taught Kim Tae-sung to see. His organization noticed the changes. Kim Tae-sung was still dangerous when he needed to be, still commanded absolute authority. But he was different, more thoughtful, less reactive. "He doesn't just scare us anymore," one mid-level associate told Min Jun. "He understands us. It's somehow more intimidating." Min Jun, who now brought his daughter to the office occasionally after her treatments, just smiled. But patterns, as Amara always said, have a way of returning. It started with a phone call. A young man named Hwang Jae-min, barely 25, had taken over Nakamura's former operations after the consortium collapsed. He was ambitious, ruthless, and he wanted Seoul. "He's been buying loyalty," Min Jun reported, "offering double what we pay. Some of our outer territories are wavering." Kim Tae-sung listened calmly. "And what does he want ultimately?" "A meeting with you to negotiate territories." "No." "Sir?" "No meetings. No negotiations. He'll take it as weakness." But that night, when Amara arrived, she found him standing at his window, tense. "What did you see?" she asked quietly. "A problem that needs handling." "That's not what I meant." He turned to look at her. "I saw myself doing what I've always done, meeting threats with overwhelming force, crushing Wong before he becomes a real danger. And I wondered if there was another way." Amara set down her bag. "Trace with me." They sat together, fingers on the indigo fabric, breathing in rhythm. The pattern showed itself slowly. Wang Jae-min was desperate, trying to prove himself to the remnants of the Chinese consortium. If Kim Tae-sung crushed him, someone else would just take his place. The cycle would continue. But there was another thread. "He's young," Amara said softly, seeing it too, "like you were once. That doesn't make him less dangerous." "No, but it means he's still forming, still deciding who he'll become." Kim Tae-sung opened his eyes. "You want me to mentor him? I want you to offer him a choice between becoming another casualty of the pattern or breaking it. That's naive." "Maybe." Amara met his eyes. "But 3 months ago, you would have already killed him. Now you're considering alternatives. That's not naive. That's evolved." He pulled her close. "You're dangerous to my reputation." "Good. Your reputation could use some danger." The next week, Kim Tae-sung did something unprecedented. He invited Wang Jae-min to dinner. Not in his private office, in a public restaurant. Neutral territory. Wang arrived expecting a trap, his bodyguards tense. Kim Tae-sung arrived alone. "You came by yourself?" Wang said suspiciously. "So did you. Your guards are outside, just like mine." Kim Tae-sung gestured to a chair. "Sit, let's talk."
they ordered. The conversation was tense initially, both men circling each other verbally. Then Kim Tae-sung said, "How old are you?" 25. "I was 22 when I killed my first man." He saw Wong's eyes widen. He was trying to take territory I'd barely established. I thought I had to prove I was dangerous, so I shot him in a back alley and left him there. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've spent 20 years being that person, and I'm tired." Kim Tae-sung leaned forward. "You think you need Seoul to prove yourself, to show the consortium remnants that you're worthy. But Wong-si, I've been where you are, and I can tell you it never ends. There's always another territory, another threat, another person to crush. So you're offering me what? Wisdom?" Wong's voice was bitter. "I'm offering you a partnership. Not as equals, I'm not a fool, but as mentor and successor. You work with me for 5 years, learn the territory, earn respect the right way. Then I give you Busan, free and clear. Why would you do that?" "Because someone once gave me a choice," Kim Tae-sung said quietly, "between continuing a pattern that would destroy me or breaking it, and I want to see what happens if I offer that same choice to you." He stared at him. "If I refuse? Then I do what I've always done, and you become a memory." Kim Tae-sung's voice was cold, but not cruel. "But you seem smarter than that." The young man sat back, thinking. 5 years, he said finally. "And Busan, free and clear, free and clear." They shook hands. When Kim Tae-sung returned to his penthouse, Amara was waiting. "How did it go?" she asked. "We'll see. Either I just created a powerful ally, or I gave a snake time to grow fangs. And if it's the snake, then I'll handle it. But at least I'll know I tried something different." Amara kissed him. "I'm proud of you." "Don't be. I might have just made a strategic mistake." "No, you made a human choice. That's different." 6 months passed. Wong proved himself surprisingly loyal, not because he was grateful. Kim Tae-sung didn't trust gratitude, but because he was smart enough to recognize a good opportunity. Amara's sabotage ended, but she'd negotiated a split appointment, half the year in New York, half in Seoul. It wasn't perfect, but it was working. They'd learned to exist in each other's orbits without losing themselves. But one night, Amara woke gasping. "What is it?" Tae-sung asked immediately. "A vision, a strong one." Her hands were shaking. "Tell me." She sat up, pulling on his robe. "There's a man, someone from your past, someone you hurt." Her voice was tight. "He's planning something. Revenge. It's close, within days." "Who?" "I don't know. I just saw—" She closed her eyes, trying to hold on to the images. "A face with a scar, across the left cheek, and fire. I saw fire." Kim Tae-sung went very still. "What?" Amara opened her eyes. "Do you know who that is?" "Park Sung-ho. I cut his face 8 years ago during a territory dispute. He disappeared after that." "Tae-sung, if he's back, he's not here for conversation." He was already moving, reaching for his phone. But Amara caught his arm. "Wait, look at the pattern. There's no time. There's always time to see clearly." Her grip was firm. "Tae-sung, if you react out of fear, you'll miss something important." He wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at him to secure his territory, to find Park before Park found him. But he'd learned to trust her sight. They sat on the floor, the indigo fabric between them. "Show me," he said. They traced the symbols together, breathing in rhythm, falling into that meditative state, and the pattern revealed itself. Park Sung-ho had indeed returned, but he wasn't planning to attack Kim Tae-sung. He was planning to burn down a building in Gangnam, a building that housed a front company for one of Kim Tae-sung's operations, but more importantly, a building where Min Jun's daughter had physical therapy appointments. "It's not about killing you," Amara whispered. "It's about taking something you value, making you feel what he felt." "When?" "Tomorrow, evening, after most people have left." Kim Tae-sung's eyes snapped open. "We need to evacuate. And arrest him," Amara added. "Tae-sung, you could kill him, but the pattern shows another option." "I'm listening." "Give him what he wants. Not revenge, but acknowledgement." She gripped his hands. "He's been carrying this scar for 8 years, carrying the humiliation. What if instead of destroying him, you acknowledged what you did, offered restitution? He'll see it as weakness." Or he'll see it as power. Her voice was urgent. The power to admit wrong, to break the cycle of violence. Isn't that what you've been learning? Kim Tae-sung's jaw clenched. Every part of him resisted, but he'd learned to break patterns. The next evening, he went to the building alone. Park Sung-ho was already there, in the basement, gasoline cans prepared. "Park Si," Kim Tae-sung said calmly. The man spun, knife drawn. The scar across his left cheek was livid in the dim light. "How did you—" "I knew you were coming. I need to talk to you. I'm done talking." Park's voice shook with rage. "You destroyed my face, my reputation, everything. I know. And I'm sorry." The words hung in the air. Park stared at him. "What?" "I'm sorry." Kim Tae-sung moved closer, deliberately making himself vulnerable. 8 years ago, I was trying to prove how dangerous I was. You were a threat, so I made an example of you. I took your face to take your power. And now you're here to finish the job? No, I'm here to offer restitution." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. 2 million won, enough for reconstructive surgery, for therapy, for rebuilding what I destroyed. Park didn't take it. "Why? What's your game?" "No game. I'm trying to break a pattern." Kim Tae-sung leaned forward. "You think you need Seoul to prove yourself, to show the consortium remnants that you're worthy, but you can burn this building. It'll hurt me financially. You'll probably die in the process. My security is already surrounding the block." Park's face went pale. "Or," Kim Tae-sung continued, "you can take the money, get your face fixed, start over, and we both walk away from the cycle." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Park looked at the envelope, at the gasoline cans, at his scarred reflection in a broken mirror. "Who are you?" he asked. "Kim Tae-sung doesn't apologize. Kim Tae-sung doesn't offer peace. Kim Tae-sung is learning that revenge is a spiral that eats everyone it touches." He turned to leave. "The money's yours. So is the choice." He walked out. Min Jun was waiting with security. "Sir?" "Stand down. Let him leave if he chooses." They waited, tense, ready. Park Sung-ho emerged 15 minutes later, envelope in hand, gasoline left behind. He looked at Kim Tae-sung across the distance. Then he bowed, not low, but enough, and walked away. When Kim Tae-sung returned home, Amara was pacing. "Tell me," she demanded. He told her everything. When he finished, she sat down heavily. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually broke it." "What?" "The spiral, the cycle, the thing that returns." Her eyes were wet. "Tae-sung, do you understand what just happened? You turned a revenge pattern into a healing pattern. That's extraordinary." He sat beside her, suddenly exhausted. "I was terrified," he admitted. "I know. I thought he'd kill me, or refuse, or that I'd look weak. But you did it anyway," she said, taking his face in her hands. "You chose vulnerability over violence. That's not weakness, that's evolution." He kissed her, deep and grateful. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. "Yes, you could have. I just helped you see what was already possible." They sat together in the quiet of his penthouse, Seoul glittering below. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you keep choosing. Every day, every situation, you keep breaking patterns instead of following them." "That sounds exhausting." "It is," she smiled, "but it's also how you become someone your mother would be proud of." The words hit him in the chest. That night, lying beside her, Kim Tae-sung thought about indigo scarves and women who taught their sons to be careful with power. His mother had died never seeing him successful, never knowing if her warnings had landed. But somehow, through 7 generations of women and an indigo head wrap, her wisdom had found him anyway. 2 years later, Kim Tae-sung stood in the lobby of the Lotus Hotel, the same lobby where he'd once shouted at a woman about her head wrap. But today he wasn't shouting. He was waiting. The elevator opened, and Amara emerged, wearing the indigo gilet. She'd come from the airport, fresh from New York, where she'd been teaching for the past 3 months. Their arrangement had evolved into something sustainable. She taught fall semester at Columbia, spring semester at Seoul University. They'd learned to exist in 2 worlds without losing each other. "You're early," she said, smiling. "I wanted to meet you properly this time." She laughed and kissed him. "No shouting?" No shouting. They walked through the lobby together, and Kim Tae-sung noticed the staff watching, not with fear, with respect. Something had changed. He had changed. That evening they had dinner in the same restaurant where she'd eaten the night they met. Do you remember what you told me that first night? About the prophecy? About the spiral, the thing that returns. He took her hand across the table. I've been thinking about that pattern. And? What if the thing that returns isn't always negative? What if sometimes it's grace? Amara tilted her head, listening. I've been tracking the people whose patterns we broke. Huang took over Busan last year. He's doing well, fair but firm. Park got his surgery. He's working construction in Daegu. Clean, stable. Minjun's daughter is in remission. You're saying the good spirals too? Yes, he squeezed her hand. And I think my mother knew that. When she told me to be careful with power, she wasn't just warning me about the danger. She was teaching me that power can spiral both ways, destruction or creation. She'd be proud of you. I hope so, because I'm trying every day, Amara, to use what I have to create better patterns instead of perpetuating violent ones. I know you are. She reached across and touched the symbols on her head wrap, and the pattern is responding. Can you see it? He closed his eyes briefly, reaching for that sight she'd taught him, and yes, he could see it. His organization was more stable than it had ever been, not because he ruled with more fear, but because he ruled with more wisdom. People followed him because they trusted his judgment, not just his violence. The territories were peaceful. His enemies had become allies or had found other paths. And standing beside him through it all, a woman who wore ancient symbols and taught him to see beyond his own certainty. I see it, he whispered. When they returned to his penthouse, Amara had a gift for him. A square of fabric, indigo, like her gele. But this one was embroidered with different symbols. This one is for you, she said. My grandmother taught me the patterns. Now I'm teaching you. These symbols, she traced them, are for protection, for vision, for balance. It's beautiful. It's also practical. When I'm in New York and you're here, use it. Meditate. Trace the patterns. Stay connected to what you've learned. When you're in New York, he repeated. Then carefully, what if you didn't have to keep splitting time? Taesung, she said. I'm not asking you to give up your career. I'm asking if there's a way to build something new together. He took both her hands. What if Columbia offered a permanent partnership with Seoul University? What if you could base yourself here and visit there, or vice versa? That's a huge administrative challenge. I know people who could make that happen. Of course you do, she laughed. Is that a yes? She looked at him for a long moment, then at the indigo fabric in her hands, then back at him. It's a let me see what's possible, she said. But Taesung, if we do this, it has to be equal. Not you solving problems for me, both of us building something together. Equal, he agreed. I'm learning about that, too. They made love that night with a tenderness that came from 2 years of learning each other, of breaking patterns, of creating something neither had thought possible. Afterwards, lying in the dark, Amara said, Do you remember what I told you about the spiral? The thing that returns? Yes, I was wrong about something. What? I thought it was a warning, a prophecy of what would happen if you didn't change. She turned to face him, but it wasn't. It was a mirror, showing you what you were already becoming. All I did was name it. So I was always going to change? No, you were always capable of change, but you needed someone to show you it was possible. Just like you showed Park it was possible, and Huang, and everyone whose pattern you've broken since. We showed them together. Yes, she smiled in the darkness. Together, 5 years later. The Seoul University auditorium was packed. Dr. Amara Okoye stood on stage, now a permanent joint professor between Columbia and Seoul University. Their arrangement had taken 2 years to negotiate, but it was working beautifully. Her topic tonight, Prophecy as Partnership, How Ancient Wisdom Transforms Modern Power. In the back row, Kim Taesung sat beside Minjun. They'd come to every one of her lectures in Seoul, though Taesung tried to be subtle about it. He wasn't very successful. She's brilliant, Minjun whispered. I know, Taesung replied. On stage, Amara was explaining Insibdi symbols to a rapt audience. These patterns aren't magic, she said. They're wisdom, accumulated knowledge passed through generations. My grandmother taught them to me. I teach them to my students. And someday, she smiled at someone in the audience, they'll teach them to their children. After the lecture, during the reception, a young woman approached Amara.
Dr. Okoye, I wanted to thank you. Your work on prophetic systems helped me understand my own family's traditions. We're from Jeju. We have women who read signs too. Tell me about them, Amara said warmly. The conversation expanded. 3 more students joined, sharing stories of grandmothers who knew when storms were coming, aunts who could sense family trouble before it arrived, mothers who seemed to see their children's futures, pattern readers, all of them. Maybe we're not so rare, one student suggested. Maybe we're just usually silent. Then let's be loud, Amara said. Let's document these traditions before they're lost. Let's honor the women who carried this wisdom. As the reception wound down, Tae-sung appeared at her elbow. Ready? He asked. Almost. One more conversation. She turned to the students. Come to my office hours. Bring your family stories. Let's see if we can build something together. A database of East Asian and African prophetic traditions. The students lit up and hurried off to plan. You're going to be busy, Tae-sung observed as they walked to his car. Good. Busy is good. In the car, driving through Seoul's nighttime streets, Amara touched the indigo scarf wrapped loosely around her shoulders. Do you ever think about that first night, when you yelled at me in the lobby? Often. Do you regret it? No. He glanced at her. If I hadn't yelled, we might never have really seen each other. Sometimes the pattern requires friction. That's very wise, Mr. Kim. I had a good teacher, Dr. Okoye. At home, their home now, a penthouse they'd redesigned together to honor both their backgrounds, Amara brewed tea while Tae-sung changed out of his suit. The walls held both Korean calligraphy and framed NCBD symbols, East meeting West, old wisdom speaking to old wisdom. I have something to tell you, Amara said when he returned. The tone made him look at her closely. Good or bad? Neither. Just a pattern I've been watching. She set down her tea. Tae-sung, your organization has fundamentally changed. You know that, right? I know we're more stable, more profitable. No, I mean it's no longer what it was. She leaned forward. 5 years ago, you ran a criminal empire. Now you run something closer to a protective association. You mediate disputes. You prevent violence. You help people transition out of crime into legitimate work. I'm still dangerous when I need to be. Yes, but you're dangerous in defense now, not offense. You've become what your mother probably hoped you'd be, strong enough to protect, wise enough to choose peace when possible. Tae-sung sat back, processing this. So what does that mean? It means the pattern has completed, the spiral has returned, but as grace, like you said, not karma, not punishment, just evolution. She took his hand. You've become the change you were afraid couldn't exist. I couldn't have done it alone. No one ever does, she smiled, but you made the choices, every day, every situation. You chose to see differently. They sat in comfortable silence, tea cooling between them. Then Tae-sung said, There's something I want to ask you. I'm listening. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Amara's breath caught. Before you say anything, he said quickly, I know we're not traditional. I know our life is complicated. I know we exist in 2 worlds and neither of us wants to give up who we are. Tae-sung. But I also know that 5 years ago, you walked into my lobby wearing symbols I didn't understand, and you changed every pattern I thought was fixed. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, elegant, simple, with an indigo stone. This is lapis lazuli, the color of your gele, the color your symbols live in. Amara's eyes filled. I'm not asking you to be my wife in the traditional sense. I'm asking you to be my partner in all things, in breaking patterns, in creating new ones, in teaching the next generation how to see what we've learned to see. You're asking me to marry me. I'm asking you to keep choosing this, us, every day, with formal commitment. He met her eyes. Will you? Amara looked at the ring, at him, at the life they'd built. Messy, complicated, spanning continents and cultures. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll keep choosing this.
He slipped the ring on her finger, and she pulled him into a kiss that tasted like tea and promise. "My grandmother would have liked you," she whispered against his lips. "Your grandmother saw this, didn't she, when she taught you the patterns? I think she saw the possibility that somewhere, somehow, I'd meet someone powerful enough to be dangerous and humble enough to change." Amara pulled back to look at him. "She'd say you were always meant to find your way to me, and I to you. Is that prophecy or pattern? Does it matter?" He kissed her again. "No, I suppose it doesn't." 10 years after that first night in the lobby, Amara stood in a classroom at Seoul University, teaching a course on cultural prophetic systems. Her students were a mix: Korean, American, African, European, all drawn to understanding how their ancestors had read the world. "Prophecy isn't about seeing a fixed future," she told them, echoing her grandmother's wisdom. "It's about seeing the threads, understanding which patterns lead where, and then, this is crucial, making conscious choices about which threads to follow." A student raised her hand. "But Dr. Okoye, doesn't that mean we create our own fate?" "Partially. We work with existing threads, history, culture, psychology, probability. But yes, we weave the pattern ourselves through our choices." She smiled. "That's the real power, not knowing what will happen, but knowing what could happen and choosing wisely." After class, she walked to a cafe near campus, the same cafe where she and Tae-sung had shared tea years ago. He was waiting, reading a book on Korean philosophy. At 53, he'd aged gracefully. Silver streaked his hair, lines creased his face, but his eyes held a peace that hadn't been there 10 years ago. "How was class?" he asked as she sat. "Good. We're discussing the intersection of African and East Asian prophetic traditions. One of my students is writing a thesis on it. Your grandmother would be proud." "She'd be amazed," Amara laughed. "A girl from rural Nigeria teaching in Seoul married to a former Korean mob boss. That's not a pattern anyone could have predicted." "Former mob boss," he emphasized. "I prefer conflict resolution consultant now." It was true. His organization had fully legitimized over the past decade. He still had influence, still commanded respect, but now he mediated disputes between businesses, helped police understand underground networks, and mentored young men trying to leave gang life. He'd become what he'd offered Hwang years ago, a bridge between worlds. "How's the book coming?" Amara asked. He grimaced. "Slowly. Turns out writing about power dynamics and personal transformation is harder than living it, but important. Yes." He closed the philosophy book. "People need to know it's possible to change, to break patterns, to become something other than what you were." A young man approached their table hesitantly. "Excuse me," he said in Korean. "Are you Kim Tae-sung?" Tae-sung tensed slightly, old habits, but kept his voice calm. "I am. I just wanted to thank you. You helped my brother 5 years ago, got him out of a gang situation in Busan. He's clean now, has a job, a family." The young man bowed deeply. "Because of you, I didn't lose him." After he left, Amara reached across the table and squeezed Tae-sung's hand. "That's the spiral returning," she said softly. "As grace, as grace." They finished their tea in comfortable silence, watching Seoul move around them.
Later, walking home through streets Tae-sung had once controlled through fear, Amara said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come to Seoul that year?" "Often. And I think the pattern would have found another way." He glanced at her. "Maybe not with you specifically, but something would have broken through. My mother's warning was too strong. It was woven into me, waiting. So I was just the catalyst?" "No. You were the teacher, the mirror, the woman brave enough to walk into a dangerous man's territory and tell him he was blind." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "You were everything, Amara. Don't diminish that." She touched his face gently. "We saved each other. We did." At home, Amara unwrapped her hair and hung the indigo gele carefully on its hook. After 10 years, the fabric was softer. The golden symbols slightly faded, but they still held their power. "I should make a new one," she mused. "Why?" Tae-sung came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist.
That one has our whole story in it. Exactly. It's carried enough. Time to weave new patterns. What will the new symbol say? Amara leaned back against him, thinking. Transformation, partnership, the spiral that returns as grace. She paused. And maybe one for the powerful man who learned to see. Is there a symbol for that? There will be. I'll create it. That night, as Soul glittered outside their window, Amara sat at her grandmother's loom, shipped from Nigeria years ago, now set up in their study. She began weaving a new gele, indigo thread for her lineage, gold thread for wisdom, and silver thread, new, her own edition, for transformation. The symbols formed slowly under her fingers, spirals and crosses, circles and lines, each one a story, each one a pattern. Tae-sung watched from the doorway. "What are you thinking?" she asked, without looking up. "That 10 years ago you shouted at me about your head wrap, and now I'm watching you create the next one. Life is strange. Life is patterned," she corrected. "Strange is when you can't see the weaving. And what's the pattern here? In us." Amara paused her work and looked at him. Two people from different worlds, carrying different wisdom, meeting at the exact moment both were ready to change, learning to see what the other could see, creating something new together. Not West African, not Korean, but both, a hybrid pattern that couldn't exist without both threads. That's beautiful. That's true, she smiled. Beauty is just truth woven carefully. She returned to her work, and Tae-sung sat beside her, watching the symbols emerge. "Teach me that one," he said, pointing to a new symbol she was creating. This means the thing that was predicted became the thing that was chosen." She guided his hand over the pattern. "It's about agency, about the moment prophecy becomes decision. Like when you warned me about Nakamura? Exactly. I showed you the pattern. You chose to break it. The prophecy didn't make you do anything. It just revealed options you couldn't see alone." Tae-sung traced the symbol with his finger, memorizing it. "Will you teach this to your students? I'll teach it to anyone who wants to learn, including you. You should come to my class sometime. Guest lecture, a case study in pattern recognition and personal transformation." People would be shocked. Kim Tae-sung talking about vulnerability and change? Good. Shock them. Show them it's possible. He considered this, then nodded. "All right, I'll do it." "Really? Really? If I've learned anything from you, it's that hiding wisdom helps no one. If my story can help someone else break their pattern, then it should be told." Amara set down her weaving and kissed him. "Your mother would be so proud." "Our mothers," Tae-sung corrected. "Yours taught me to see, mine taught me to question. Together, they made this possible." 7 generations of women, Amara agreed, all leading here, to this moment, to us. They sat together in the quiet study, surrounded by symbols old and new, as Soul hummed outside. And in that moment, if someone was able to see patterns the way Amara did, they would have seen threads of gold and silver and indigo weaving through time. From a small village in Nigeria to the streets of Seoul. From a mother's warning to a grandmother's wisdom. From a young man's violence to a mature man's peace. From a woman's isolation to a partnership that honored both paths. All of it connected. All of it intentional. All of it proof that prophecy was never about fate. It was about seeing clearly enough to choose wisely. 20 years after that first night, the Lotus Hotel had changed ownership. The new owner had turned it into a cultural center, part hotel, part museum, part community space. In the lobby where Kim Tae-sung had once shouted at a stranger, there was now an exhibition, Prophetic Traditions from Nigeria to Korea, curated by Dr. Amara Okoye Kim. The exhibition displayed Nsibiti symbols alongside Korean fortune-telling traditions, African geles next to Korean bojagi wrapping cloths, showing the parallels, the wisdom that existed across continents. At the opening, Amara stood with Tae-sung, both now in their 60s. "Do you remember?" she asked, gesturing to the exact spot where they'd first clashed. "I remember every word," he replied. "You smiled at me and said, 'It's interesting that you think I dressed for you.' And you looked like you'd seen a ghost." I had. I'd seen the future I couldn't control. Thank God I couldn't control it.
A group of students approached, some hers, some from Tae-sung's occasional lectures. Professor Okoye Kim, we were wondering, the exhibition shows all these prophetic traditions, but does prophecy still work in the modern world? Amara smiled. What do you think prophecy is? Seeing the future? No, prophecy is pattern recognition, and patterns are everywhere. She gestured around them. In algorithms, in social trends, in political movements, in personal relationships, we're surrounded by patterns. Prophecy is just the art of seeing them clearly enough to make wise choices. So, anyone can be a prophet? Anyone can learn to see patterns, Amara corrected. Whether you call yourself a prophet, or a systems analyst, or a therapist, or just a careful observer, you're doing the same work, reading the threads, understanding consequences, helping people make better choices. And is that what you did for Professor Kim? The question was bold, but genuine. Tae-sung and Amara exchanged glances. She showed me I was following a pattern that would destroy me, Tae-sung said simply, and she gave me tools to see it for myself. After that, the choices were mine. But how did she know? The student pressed. How did Professor Okoye Kim know what pattern you were in? Because she'd seen it before, in her uncle, in other men, in the history of power and violence across cultures. She recognized the shape of it. He looked at Amara with open affection, and she cared enough to warn a stranger. Even when he yelled at you about your head wrap? Asked another student, grinning. Especially then, Amara laughed. Because men who yell about things they don't understand are usually afraid, and fear makes people dangerous. I wanted to interrupt that pattern before it accelerated. The students lingered, asking more questions, until eventually the crowd pulled them apart. Later, standing alone in the exhibition, Amara found herself in front of a display case. Inside was the indigo gele she'd worn that first night, preserved now, behind glass, a relic of a moment that had changed 2 lives. Tae-sung appeared beside her. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Coming to Seoul, confronting a dangerous man, risking so much? Never. She leaned against him. Do you regret not having me escorted out? Not for a second. They stood in comfortable silence, looking at the fabric that had started everything. You know what I realized? Amara said eventually. The prophecy I gave you that night, about Nakamura, about the spiral, about the thing that returns, it wasn't really for you. No? No, it was for me. She looked up at him. I'd been traveling the world, studying patterns, documenting prophecy systems, but I'd never actually intervened, never actually tried to break a pattern I'd seen forming. I was an observer, an academic, and you changed that. You gave me a reason to stop observing and start acting, to use what I knew for more than just research. She smiled. So really, we saved each other from the very beginning. I just didn't realize it yet. The pattern knew. Tae-sung said, even when we didn't. Yes. Amara touched the glass case, her fingers over the indigo fabric. The pattern always knows. As the exhibition closed for the evening and they walked out into Seoul's night air, Amara felt a familiar tingle, the sense that had guided her for 60 years. She paused on the street. What is it? Tae-sung asked immediately, recognizing the look. A student, the one who asked about modern prophecy. Amara's voice was distant. She's standing at a crossroads, about to make a choice that will define the next decade of her life. Should we go back? No. Amara shook her head slowly. She has to find her own way. We can't intervene in every pattern. Then why mention it? Because in 3 days, she'll come to my office, and I'll be ready to help her see what she needs to see. Amara smiled. The pattern is already in motion. They walked home through streets that held 20 years of memories. The city had changed. They had changed. The world had changed. But the patterns remained. Spirals and cycles, threads and weaving, the thing that returns again and again, teaching those who had eyes to see. At home, Amara brewed tea while Tae-sung reviewed notes for his book, finally in its final draft after years of writing. Read me the ending, she said, settling beside him. He found the page and read aloud. Prophecy is not magic. It is not supernatural.
It is simply the art of seeing patterns clearly enough to make wise choices. My wife taught me this when I was a man drowning in violence, blind to any path except the one I'd always walked. She didn't save me. She showed me I could save myself, and in doing so, we saved each other. If you are reading this as someone powerful, know, your power is only as useful as your vision. See clearly, break harmful patterns, create new ones. If you are reading this as someone without power, know, the ability to see patterns is power. It is the ability to warn, to guide, to change outcomes. Do not underestimate it. And if you are reading this as someone standing at a crossroads, uncertain which path to take, know, the pattern is already showing you the way. You just need to stop, breathe, and look at what's actually there. The threads are visible if you're willing to see them. 20 years ago, a woman in an indigo head wrap walked into my territory and told me I was blind. She was right, but she also gave me sight. This book is my way of passing that sight forward. May you see clearly. May you choose wisely. May you break the patterns that harm and create the patterns that heal. The spiral returns. Always. Make sure what returns is grace. Taesung set down the manuscript. Amara was crying quietly. "It's perfect," she whispered. "It's true," he corrected. "That's all it needs to be." They sat together as night deepened. Two people who had found each other across impossible distances, whose patterns had woven together to create something neither could have imagined. Outside, Seoul glittered. Inside, an indigo head wrap hung on its hook, symbols fading, but still powerful. And somewhere in the city, a young woman stood at a crossroads, feeling the pull of patterns she didn't yet understand, sensing that in 3 days she'd walk into a professor's office and her life would change. The thread continued, the pattern wove on, and the prophecy, ancient, modern, eternal, whispered its truth. See clearly, choose wisely, the spiral returns. Make it grace. The end. From the desk of Dr. Amara Okoye Kim. My grandmother used to say that prophecy is just another word for paying attention. The future isn't written, it's woven, and every thread we choose, every pattern we break or create becomes part of the fabric. This story is dedicated to the 7 generations of women who taught me to see, and to one powerful man who taught me that even the most fixed patterns can change. May you see the threads in your own life clearly. May you choose wisely.